Welcome to Right Reads.
I'm Kirt.
I'm Tania, and we're besties.
Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Tania, as I just said, and we decided, after working together for many years, as a book-selling team at Greenwood's Bookshop in Edmonton, which just recently closed down, we decided that we really wanted to continue having book debates and that the whole world should hear us.
Indeed.
And so we also wanted everyone to come and join in on the big book discussion, so we decided to start a book club. It's all very exciting.
Yeah, it's a book club podcast that will change the world of literature forever.
I don't know if you put enough of a pause between the last bit and forever. Try it again.
Change the world of literature forever.
Nice.
Right.
I think that works. I think that totally works. So, we've chosen By Light Alone by Adam Roberts as our first book for the first maiden voyage of the Right Reads podcast. And I know a few of you have gone out and bought the book and have read it already. So we're so pleased that we already have listeners and that our friends and family and people we don't even know are joining in. Yeah, a lot of support. If you want to join in on all the discussions, you can find us on Goodreads under Right Reads. You can find us on Facebook as the Right Reads Podcast or on Twitter as Right Reads. You can email us at rightreads@gmail.com, and our website is www.rightreads.wordpress.com. And hopefully we'll be able to put this podcast up on iTunes very soon.
Why don't we have an address for people to send letters?
I guess we could get a P.O. box.
No, I don't want to do that anymore.
Well, book people, we tend to be old-fashioned sometimes, so we could get a P.O. box of some sort, or...
You assume that if they're listening to a podcast on a computer, they probably have email.
Yeah, I hope, but it would be nice to receive letters,
I don't want
think?
letters. No, I changed my mind.
You don't want letters?
No.
Oh, but, well, okay, fine, whatever. You're the man. You get to make all the decisions. It's just the way it goes. So anyway, we're gonna get our first podcast started off not by talking about the book club book, but by talking about some books that might be on our radar. Kirtles, any books on your radar right now?
Well, I've been reading an unusual amount lately because I've had some time on my hands, and I've been reading a lot of dystopian fiction. Because maybe, I don't know, it's actually a coincidence that they're all like that. It wasn't planned or anything.
Well, there's a lot of dystopian stuff coming out right now,
That's true, yeah. The first one was called Flashback by Dan Simmons. And if you look at Goodreads, I gave a little review. I'm kind of, the further away I get from the book, the less sure I am about how I feel about it. But I'd be curious to see or to hear other people's opinions on it if they read it.
What's making you unsure?
Well, it's...
just a general sense of trepidation?
When I was reading it, I was willing to give the author, that permission we give them to just create a unit, because it takes place like 30 years in the future. So, he said, this is the world that I think is going to exist in 30 years. And just, go with that and just kind of like accept that. But the more, after I read it and when I saw some reviews and some ideas about it, I realized that this guy is actually pushing a political agenda. And it's very libertarian, and I don't really jive with that.
Well, we're both liberals. We're both freaky liberals. Are you a commie?
No.
Oh, okay.
Well, it could be. Close.
Yeah, possibly.
I have leanings.
We may be pinkos.
Yeah.
Okay. We're not sure, but we may be. Yeah.
Well, we're Canadians, so... We're
Right.
very apologetic about it, too.
Yes, that's right.
So there was that one, but it was actually like a really good story. It kept me reading 500 pages, and I wanted to know what because it's a mystery. It's like a detective thriller. So I wanted to know who done it, right? And so it kept me reading through a lot of, political rants that I didn't actually realize were political rants until afterwards, and I just kind of let it process.
Well, yeah, kind of. We were discussing this a little bit before on our own, just a little bit about how it could be kind of like Narnia. I'm a children's book reader, and like that you can read Narnia without having the Chronicles of Narnia without having without necessarily attributing all the religious aspects to it, and still find it an interesting thing. Do you think you could do the same thing with this book? Do you think you could take out some of that political stuff and just read it as a fun futuristic mystery?
Yeah, if you just kind of like give them, just kind of say, okay, yeah, Obama completely destroys America. Say, let's go with that.
See where that takes us. Right. Okay.
Global warming's a myth. Okay, let's see where that goes.
Right. Total myth. Anything else on your radar?
I just read one called People Park by Pasha Mala, and it's his first novel. And it's another weird one. It's not dystopian. Well, it's sort of dystopian because it takes place in on this island that's sort of like a social experiment. So it's the city that's kind of like self-contained. So it's, like the ultimate shop local kind of ideal. But things don't go very well for them. They kind of, it's... Basically, they bulldoze all these low-income houses to build this park to celebrate their city. And all these people get marginalized as a result of that.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, even the good ideas can be bad ideas sometimes. But it takes place in almost like an alternate history, because it's kind of like our world, but there's no computers in evidence. So it's all TV, like closed-circuit TV. And everybody has their own TV show, kind of like podcasts.
Kind of like what we're doing right now. Oh, okay.
But everybody in the whole city has their own show. And so you can watch, all these people just living their lives.
Like massive reality TV scale. Yeah. Or reality TV on a massive scale is what I meant to say there, yeah.
And they call him an illustrationist. He doesn't want to be called an illusionist or a magician because he's illustrating things through his performances. And so he makes the bridge that connects the island to the mainland disappear completely. And then he disappears, and they can't find him, but they want their bridge back. And so it's like, magic realism, and like it's a...
Would you recommend it?
Yes, I would. Yeah. It's the characters are really, they're in a weird environment, but they're very recognizable, and the dialogue's really believable, like really natural sounding and really, or feeling, I guess.
I always like that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would recommend it.
Now you're supposed to ask me what's on my radar.
Yeah, what's on your radar?
Yeah, thanks, Curtis. Couple of things that I've been reading recently, and one of them was The Borrower by Rebecca Mackay, I believe is how you pronounce that last name. And it's this story of a children's librarian who is sort of concerned about one of the little guys that's coming into her library all the time, and she and he end up on this road trip together. She sort of kidnaps him out of concern for really how his reading tastes have changed. His mom is kind of overbearing and is trying to regulate the books that he's reading, and he's obviously a little too bright for that, and the librarian gets really kind of upset about somebody trying to regulate what you're reading, because you should be allowed to read what you want to read even as a kid. And the book itself is pretty good. It's kind of close to my heart because I was a children's bookseller and am a children's bookseller. And it's, and you do see that. I think anyone who's worked in children's books really identifies with being concerned about kids that you really only get to see every now and again, but you sort of establish a relationship with them, and also about the freedom of reading and the freedom of choice in reading.
My kid's a big reader, but I don't want them reading this anymore.
Yes, exactly. Even though it's still a kid's book and isn't really espousing anything evil. It's kind of tough. But I mean, parents get to choose what their kids read, and that's their prerogative. I think that the character that he that is created in this book is, I'm not entirely sure I buy that she would take off in the situation which she does with this kid. I don't know that the author gets us to that point of believing that someone would do this, would actually kind of take off with a kid.
The level of peril.
Yeah, it just didn't quite get to me in that way. However, there's so much about this book that is enjoyable, and there are so many literary references in the book that I enjoyed as well. Because what can I say? There's just always that part of you that's like, I know that book. I don't know why, but it it makes you feel good that other people have obviously been affected by the same books as you have when they mention them in their own literary work. So it's all right. I wouldn't give it like a love it kind of rating, but I liked it, and I think anyone who has worked as a librarian or has worked with kids and literacy in any way would really identify with the character in a lot of ways. So I think it would be worth reading for them, but I don't know if it's a highly recommended read. And one of the other ones that I had just finished reading is there's a there's a series by somebody who's supposedly called Pittacus Lore, and it actually isn't Pittacus Lore. It's, I believe, James Frey, the author of A Million Little Pieces that was so controversial ages ago, and another writer who have started writing a young adult series.
He's a liar.
He's totally a liar,
He
and
got
you shouldn't
spanked
believe.
by Oprah.
He did get spanked by Oprah, and now he's writing about aliens. So I don't know how much we can really, trust this guy.
It's probably all made up.
The thing is that there were all these rumors surrounding this book about why he wrote it and trying to take advantage of publishing industry, and he's obviously not writing it under his own name anymore and all of this, right? But it's an enjoyable series for the most part. It's got a lot of action, and it's the premise is that these aliens from a planet that were extraordinarily eco-centered. Their planet gets destroyed by these evil aliens that obviously hate the environment and want to take over everything. And
aliens are like that.
Some aliens are like that. They're all sort of completely binary that way. They're either evil or they're really, really good and have surpassed us on the human being scale.
And they hate our monuments.
They really do. Yeah. They hate our monuments.
Especially the Eiffel Tower.
Well, who doesn't? I mean, it's covered in lights now. Anyway. They send the good aliens send a bunch of their kids to Earth to be raised in secret so that their species can sort of propagate, and then maybe these kids will eventually be able to go back to their old planet and save it. The aliens, of course, the bad aliens find out about this, send a bunch of bad aliens to Earth to try and find them and kill them. And, like I said, nothing hugely creative here, but it is a fun, enjoyable young adult read, except that I just finished the third one, and the ending is so... I'm going to go with stupid. It's just... I realize he's trying to create, the writing partnership is trying to create a series here, and so you can't wrap everything up, but they're in this massive fight, as you would expect in an action-adventure book. I'm not really giving a... Yeah, they're in this massive fight. There's a lot of them in the books. And basically, it's resolved by a magical poof.
Oh, right.
It's not, there's nothing, so that we can continue on into the next book in the series. It's not resolved, not for any real reason that it can't be resolved, just because something goes poof and it can't be resolved. Unless he fixes it entirely in the fourth book to explain this, no. And one quick little mention that I'm in the middle of reading The Dragon Seer's Gift by Janet McNaughton, and it's a fantasy read that's by a Canadian author, and you get to learn a bunch about Newfoundland history and Vikings and dragons, and it's awesome. So far, as I mentioned again, reading a lot of children's books.
Yeah. Good.
All right. Thanks, girls. So as we blunder along here on our first podcast, let's just give a shout out to trying to get this lovely book covered by Light Alone by Adam Roberts. Let's get the book talk going.
Sure. Oh yeah, we just wanted to make it clear that there will be spoilers on this podcast. Can I call it a show? Because it's
podcast is a little too awkward. It's a show.
It's a show. Okay. On this show, we will spoil the ending for you if you listen to it. So, like they always said in class, we expect you to have read the book by the time you listen to this broadcast. So we're going to give away the ending. In the end, they're all the rich people turn into vampires.
That's right. That's exactly what happens. Okay.
That's an example of a spoiler for people who don't know that there's going to be spoilers, but that's not actually how the book ends.
No, it's really not. So what's By Light Alone about? Curdles, you want to give us a little synopsis?
Well, I think it's set about 150 years in the future, and in the society that he's created, there's a huge gap between the very, very rich, so so everyone's talking about the 1%. The 1% are hugely, insanely rich, and they don't seem to do any work. And they look down on people who do work. They call them job suckers. And then there's extremely poor, which is the bulk of the planet's population. But the poor are poor almost because they choose to be, because they've discovered a way to genetically alter people so that they can do photosynthesis with
their hair.
Yeah. Their hair takes sunlight and changes it into food. So if getting food is taken out of the equation of living, you just kind of sit in the sun and eat all day.
It's the end of world hunger.
Yeah. But it's not as good a thing as it seems.
As one might expect. Dun, dun, dun.
And basically, so it follows this rich couple, or actually just this rich man, who's at a resort, and his daughter is abducted, and it's about what happened to the daughter. And then when they get her back, it's about, is this his daughter? We don't know until the end. That's a good synopsis of it, isn't it?
I think that's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah. Good job, Curdles.
Thanks.
Good job, Bestie. Yeah.
We were going to read the back of the book, and this is what we're going to get into. If you read the back of the book, it's very misleading. This book has a marketing problem. First of all, I think putting it in the sci-fi section, maybe not such a...
No, I don't think so. It's speculative fiction for sure, but I don't know about sci-fi. And it has been marketed as a fantasy sci-fi book for sure.
Even the cover, is very sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
And then the synopsis on the back is almost completely misleading.
It really is. I don't know that the back of this book is something that, to me it had nothing really to do almost with what I actually gained from the book. It's
almost a novel of ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yes, which often speculative fiction and sci-fi is, but
But it doesn't have that, really intense kind of sci-fi action storyline.
No, yeah, for sure. All right, well, thank you for that lovely synopsis. We thought we'd get started with us sharing a little bit about what we liked and didn't like about the book. And I'll start because I'm the boss.
Okay.
And so I started out with this book, and I could not stand it for the first little while. I don't know. I think we talked a little bit about how you and I both felt a little put off by the beginning of the book and by the characters.
Well, there's just so much interiority.
Yeah, and again,
is that a word? Interiority?
Sure, we'll accept it. I don't know if Scrabble does, but we'll accept it. And I mean, part of it is that Adam Roberts creates unlikable characters. He's kind of famous for it, from what I understand. And so unlikable characters, when you start off with them, there's nothing to attach you to them at first. And these are some fairly snooty, ignorant people that you can't really relate to at first. So I thought that was going to be it. But as you get going, you kind of get more into the plot of the novel and the ideas of the novel, and you can sort of forget a little bit about how unlikable these characters are. But so in terms of what I liked about the novel, I did enjoy let's see here. I did enjoy a couple of different things. Not a lot of things, but I did enjoy some of them. I really liked how he portrayed the lack of ability to connect to anything that these human beings had. That by taking away hunger as both a literal and a metaphorical thing, that you're not hungering for anything, he's taken away that actually in his world creates a world where people don't hunger for that lack of hunger means that they can't seem to connect to anything. It takes away their ability to connect to things, to people, to themselves, to anything really. And that he kind of relates that as well by taking away story. All the characters in the book kind of bring up fairy tales occasionally, or bring up like stories such as, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, but they don't really know them. Everybody's forgotten the essential stories there, and how a lack of hunger, a lack of work, a lack of desire, a lack of knowing our essential stories directly relates to how connected we are to ourselves, to our lives, to other people, to the earth itself. When we're not growing food to survive, why are we even connected to the earth? This is I mean, we are connected not just because we like to take spiritual walks in the woods, but because the earth provides us with something we need. And when you take that need away, then the connection to the earth is gone, and then after that, everything else, the connection to everything else seems to kind of go away as well. And so in that way, I got to kind of sympathize with those unlikable characters, because you started to realize just how sad it was. You started to that they thought they were connecting to things. They really did. They thought once their daughter disappears and then comes back to them, they think of this daughter of theirs as a point of connection, as this, oh my goodness, we love her and we're connected to her, but you can see that they're not even remotely connected to this girl. They don't even know what they're feeling. They're so disassociated from the rest of from reality, really. So I really enjoyed that connection between story and hunger and connection. I really enjoyed that. And the other thing, of course, is his exploration that I enjoyed was his exploration of what might actually happen if you ended world hunger. That it really doesn't, and really he comes down on the side that there is nothing that if you end world hunger, it doesn't really matter, because people are corrupt. And so even when you end world hunger, you're still going to have poor, you're still going to have rich, you're still going to have all of those things that create disequilibrium in the world, because it's not the hunger that matters, it's people's dysfunction that matters. That you can end it, and they're going to use the lack of a need to eat means that the criminals don't, or the slave bosses don't need to pay their slaves anything, because their slaves don't need any money to survive. And so it means that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and it's not a unique idea, but to suggest that even if we ended world hunger, it's still going to be the same. Plus ça change, plus ça reste la même. Like, it doesn't matter. Yes, I used French, sorry. Yeah. So those are some of the things I liked about it, and his character exploration in that way. I think there are two different things. The completely unlikable characters, I really didn't like these people. I really didn't like these people. You're not supposed to. I know you're not supposed to, but there is supposed to be something there that's going to keep you reading, obviously.
Didn't you feel a little bit for George? What's his name?
A little, yeah, George. Yeah, I felt a little bit for George, but really
he's trying so hard. He's trying to.
Yeah, but that actually, I mean, do you like tryhards? Does anybody like tryhards?
I do.
I don't know. It wasn't enough for me to really enjoy the read, and part of that lack of enjoyment was that the narrator okay, the writing style itself. There are all these reviews of this book that say that it's, the writing is impeccable and the most amazing prose. And one reviewer on Goodreads describes it as rich and luxuriant prose. At one point, the narrator describes somebody as having sticky out ears. In what way is that rich and luxuriant prose? Sticky out ears. And I'm not trying to say, I'm a weed knight. You add a Y to things and I'm okay. But it was more that the narrator seemed to be completely tonally deficient. There is a book, The Art of Fiction, by John Gardner, and he has all these examples of how when you change tone in mid-sentence, how that usually takes a reader out of the book, because and he has all these examples in his Art of Fiction book that I actually didn't think made all that much sense, and I didn't really know. I was like, I wonder what exactly he's talking about here. And then I read this book and I realized what he meant, because I was taken out of the story again and again by the change in tone of the narrator. You have a narrator that's telling you that it was a splendorous afternoon and then describing somebody as having sticky out ears. And then you have a narrator that in the middle of the book, for some reason, starts to actually address you, the reader, as you. For no reason whatsoever. He becomes extraordinarily casual for these little moments. And I just thought, this is not... over and over again, it became this rich, snooty, like this richer, kind of interesting tone, and then it switched to something casual that was just so weird, and I did not like that at all. I actually just thought it was... a better storyteller. There are reasons to sort of tonally switch things up a little bit, but I didn't think that this guy that Adam Roberts succeeded in whatever he was trying to do with it. And I also think that perhaps the narrator starts addressing us because he's getting frustrated with the characters and their ignorance. He starts saying, like, you can see this, right? But Roberts doesn't build the narrator up to that level of frustration, in my humble opinion. He just starts suddenly throwing the yous in there. And it was just so jarring to me on so many occasions, the narrator's change in tone, that I really got ripped out of this story on several occasions by that very thing. So between that and the unlikable characters, that's where I had some real hibbity-jibbity about this book. That's not a word either, just so you know.
It's a good word, though.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Sticky outy ears.
Curdles, what your pros and cons, or any response to my pros and cons?
I tell you, I couldn't disagree with you more. No, just...
You're just trying to get it going.
Yeah. But I actually, I think you're being a little hard on poor Adam Roberts. I think that never bothered me. The narration never bothered me.
Oh, that's very strange, because for me, it just about killed me.
I felt like the narrator was trying to connect with us in a way that none of the characters could.
Well, he failed on my part then.
Well, yeah. But I don't know. Maybe... you expect too much of narrators, or?
I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case. Especially, like I said, when it was the switching that killed me. That, again, it was rich and luxuriant every now and again,
Mm-hmm.
and then mid sentence it would switch into just, I don't know, just really whatevs type of language, and
okay.
I really. It completely didn't
I think
work for me.
That always happened when he was getting closer to describing the thoughts of the character.
Yeah, but in whatever the case was,
it's like a zoom lens. He come out really broad.
Yeah, possibly, but it didn't work for me. I mean, if that was what he wanted to do, was create a zoom lens every now and again, it just didn't... I didn't get that sense from it. I just got the sense that he was, like drunk or something. It was not. It was just not. It wasn't handled to me with as deft a hand as I would have liked it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's some really beautiful passages in here. Some really nice writing. I'm sorry.
Well, there's not. It's not entirely, wasted. It's just. That narrator, combined with the unlikable characters, was pretty off-putting to me for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing that put me off was that, is this what it's going to be like through the whole book?
Yes.
Because, okay, establish it, but let's move on to something else soon,
Yes.
please.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
then luckily it does when
It does.
the mystery, the kind of the turning point of the book
Yes.
happens when the daughter goes missing.
Yes.
You're like, oh, good, okay. Now let's see how these people react to
Yes.
to something fairly serious, and they're completely destroyed because of the what you're talking about. They're so they have such a hard time relating to anything other than their superficial kind of.
It's the first real thing that's happened to them. Yeah.
And he says. Evidence that circumstances had overwhelmed her. This is talking about the wife, who deals with it much more poorly than George does.
Yes. Yeah.
You see a little bit of growth in George, but you see deterioration in the wife.
her. Yes, for sure.
Evidence, in other words, of her very overwhelmability constitute a sort of anti-Copernican revolution. For the rich, few things are as disabling as uncertainty.
Beautiful writing, and then sticky out ears.
Well,
I agree with you that there are some beautiful points in here, and then I got completely, it was like I was reading and reading and reading, and then I got punched in the face by something that did not sound like it should have been in there at all. Maybe if George had been saying sticky out ears, I would have bought it.
well, who was he describing when?
One of those, I don't know, Orgaste or whatever the heck his, yes, yeah.
Superficial.
One of the
dumb
superficial
people.
guys, but that's not the only example. I'm
It's
just
like
using
that-
it because it was the best. It was the most. It was the first example that I could really grab onto. Like, why am I getting pulled out of this thing over and over again? Oh, this is why.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It kind of makes sense to describe these, really.
Yeah, for George
superficial-
to do it, but for a narrator that's using words like Copernican to then suddenly go, oh yeah, sticky out ears, that's what he's got. He's got, but whatevs. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it was too jarring. If he'd used George's voice to do it, then I would have been okay with it. But yeah, it was. I don't know. There was something about it, and we can agree to disagree on that point.
That's
Yes,
fine. That's all right. But you obviously didn't like the book as much as I did.
Yeah, I gave it 3 stars.
Yeah. I gave it 3 too.
Yeah.
But I think I'm more generous with my stars.
Yeah, no, I gave it 3 stars because the ideas in it were good enough.
Yeah.
The ideas in it were good enough, and I found enough depth within the story. I mean, it got me thinking about folktale morphology and all of this kind of stuff that I haven't thought about in a while, and it got me thinking about connection and hunger and story in ways that I hadn't before. So for that, it gets my 3 stars. But I thought it could have been. I thought the story could have been more deftly handled, writing wise,
Okay.
not idea wise.
All right. I could have lived without the middle section, the wife's kind of perspective.
It was a little pointless, but I kind of understood why he wanted to show that. I think it makes you more sympathetic to George,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Yeah,
a
you
good
you
thing.
think he's disconnected from reality? Take a
Yeah.
look at this lady
Yeah.
here. Yeah, because she's horrible. She's a horrible, horrible person. She really
okay.
is.
I don't know that I would describe her. I mean, in comparison to George,
She's
I don't.
psychotic. She's
Well,
like.
she's a little.
I mean,
psychotic.
not that people with mental illness are bad people, but
I-
or is it psychotic or is it? I always get confused with those terms. Like she's almost like serial killer.
Yes.
detached
Yeah.
from
Oh,
reality.
for sure.
Like,
For sure. Well,
she's
actually,
talking about how happy she is that her daughter's back and how much she loves her. That it makes her angry.
Yeah.
That she gets snappish with her and.
But I think she takes the idea to the extreme because George keeps asking himself, "Is this how I should feel? Is this how I should feel?" And we all, I think, judge ourselves a little bit monstrous when something happens as people. When something happens and we don't feel the way people say we should feel or whatever. And so I think she's even taking that even further, except that she doesn't really that we don't sometimes know how to deal with our emotions. We really don't. And especially somebody like her would have no concept of how to deal with a real emotion. And then I actually, this is speaking of psychosis or whatever, I did enjoy the two psychologists that they have, and the two takes on it, that there's an assertiveness training psychologist that ends up screaming at George for not coming to his appointments and being all like, this is going to be very hard on you, and this is going to be terrible, and you have to come, and then the way she treats her psychologist is absolutely appalling, because the psychologist is just trying to give her a few gentle truths, and she basically, kicks her in the teeth. Yeah, exactly. It's
fires them.
Yeah, he does represent two sides of psychology very well. The good ones that get ripped to shreds by the crazies, and then, well, not crazies, but like mean people. And now you've made me very paranoid about the mentally. Well, I too, I don't want to offend anyone, but yes. But yeah, and then also about the psychologists that are just insane themselves and are peddling something just for the money. So yeah, I did enjoy that. And
I'd say that the third part of the book is what actually got it 3 stars from me. That's my favorite part of the book, is the third part of the book.
Well, it's interesting because I did have one of the people I know that has joined our book club. I don't know if she wants names mentioned, but she was saying how it was her favorite part of the book as well. Yeah, it was the only part where there's a real character that actually has connection to anything. She's the only human being that acts like a human being as we would know them currently, within the entire. So of course you're going to feel more connected to her, and even though the story gets far more appalling at that point, it's the most enjoyable part of the book.
And she kind of bridges the gap between the two worlds, the
yes
world of the extremely poor and the world of the super wealthy, superficial people.
Yes, and she does a good job of that, and I find it interesting that I didn't find that the narrator went as crazy in that section. Seemed to have like a more definitive purpose of, and it didn't feel like even the same narrator at all. It was I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that aspect of it.
Well, that's what I mean. I think the narrator is very attuned to what's going on. And the narrator kind of changes depending on what.
I guess, and like I said, I guess I understand that. I just don't think it was done well enough for me to enjoy it.
Okay.
That's all. I think I understand that there must have been a purpose. There has to have been a purpose, because, oh my God, to have that have been pointless would not be good. But yeah, but I didn't think it was handled, as I mentioned, quite deftly enough. Yeah. But to speak more about connection and the unlikable characters, unless you had something else you wanted to add to that.
No. I do want to talk about the unlikable characters, though.
Okay, yes. I've had this problem with a couple of books recently with unlikable protagonists, and you hope that they're being used for something, that it's not just, well, I'm creating this guy and expecting you to read along just for the pleasure of reading about somebody annoying. And I think that they in this particular book, they do remind us, I think we are becoming less and less connected with each other, and really, I think we can see ourselves in that particular future where we are fooling ourselves into a sense of connection where there is none. And they go through so much introspection, the two characters at first, the George and his wife, and it's really, they think they're being introspective, but they're not. And it's really calling to attention all of us who think that we might be introspective now, and we're not. And I actually found that because his wife was more kind of almost entertaining in that way, that I enjoyed that chapter a reasonable amount because she was a little bit more fast-paced, I guess, in her introspection. She was more violent in her introspection. Which makes, again, it's entertainment value.
Violent introspection.
Violent introspection. Yes, violent introspection. And we can see that we're getting to that point where are we really connecting to the things that we're connected to? Is Facebook an actual connection? Is that the case, or are we really just? I mean, these two parents. The coming back, the return of my daughter has affected us entirely. It's changed my entire life. They don't even ask her what happened. And we've all been there. We've all been there as people where we've turned relationships with someone not into something that we. Not into something that's about that person, but it's about what we've placed upon that person, what we think they mean to us.
Yeah.
We've all done that, but to do it to such an extent where you don't even ask your daughter after a year of trauma, what happened? What was your day-to-day life like? And when she tries to bring it up in any way, shape, or form, it's like, oh, this overwhelming sense of panic, came on me, and I had to leave the room. Do you think you're connected, Curls?
I hope so.
We're connected.
Yeah.
We're connected.
Yeah. I kept thinking of the E.M. Forrester's Howard's End. The epigraph at the beginning is only connect. That's what I kept thinking about.
Well, and that's clearly what the book is. Well, I don't know if that's clearly what the book is about, because you and I both have that same. I mean, would you even say that it was to you as much about the poverty and the hunger as it was about the connection between people?
Yeah, I mean, these are kind of have become kind of cliches now, but people standing at the counter, buying a coffee or whatever with their cell phone out, texting somebody.
Yes.
While the
You're right,
the
cliche.
clerk is trying to to talk to them.
Yes, yeah.
And they're just kind of like they're basically working with a human interface unit instead of a human being. You know, or on the other side of the counter, getting people serving you, treating you that way. Just kind of like, what do you want? Input data here. And then go away.
Well, exactly, yeah. And it was interesting because when I was reading a lot of the reviews for this book, they were talking about a lot of them were talking about issues of poverty and economics and all of the rest of it in this book. And I really didn't think he had that much new to say about that. I mean, we all kind of assume that the rich get rich and the poor get poor. As much as he had a more interesting way of saying it, for sure.
This is where it could take into its taking.
But yeah, to me it was more about what a lack of connection, what a lack of need would do to the human spirit was far more what the book was about, and yet somehow the reviews seemed to be a little bit more about the economic. At least that's what I was kind of seeing, whereas to me this book only spoke of connection in that last little bit where, spoiler, where he recognizes his daughter as for who she is, was actually really it was the first real moment in the whole book, and a real moment of connection in the whole book, and it actually quite moved me. It really did, and you realize how dead the rest of the book had been, how that affects you, how it makes you feel kind of icky as you're reading it. And it was I really thought that was so to me, especially after that moment, I thought, wow, this book is all about connection, and yet I didn't really see that. I mean, maybe people weren't using that word specifically, but I really didn't see that in a lot of the reviews. I mean, I'm not trying to say that we're so special. I just found that
most of the reviewers aren't as smart as we are.
Well, yeah, that's right. We're two intellectual giants, I'm sure. But I don't know. Maybe that was just me taking something out of it that wasn't meant to be quite there.
That's kind of the first thing that occurred to me, was that this is like this Occupy Wall Street and the 1% and the 99% and all that sort of thing is going on here. And so I thought, well, that's what I'll talk about. But then as I read more of it, I was like, no, there's a lot more going on here than just kind of like, oh, look, rich people are, unfairly suppressing poor people.
Yeah, which I mean has been done before, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of
But they're so detached from the poor people that they're not even, suppressing or
no, they're
it's
not doing
just,
anything to
It's like a total. There's almost two different species living on the planet.
exactly.
Like-
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And do you mind if I get into a little bit? I really, because we're both people that place a lot of emphasis on literature and story and all of the rest of it, I really enjoyed his constant references to people trying to remember story
Yeah.
and not quite getting it right. And this is to me why I ended up looking up some of like Vladimir Propp's stuff. He's this person that categorized what did he do? He did the morphology of the folktale. That was his book, and he basically identified that there were that folktales all had like little different beginnings as a setup, and then they had 31 functions that you could sort of pick and choose after that. But the first three are usually always the same first three, and I found it interesting that they were the essential parts of the plot of this book as well. And so because to me he kept referencing fairy tales, he kept referencing Rapunzel and all of the
Bible
rest,
stories
and Bible stories and all of that. And I really because the first three are absentation, which is removing either the hero or someone of the hero's family, taking them away, and this creates the initial tension of the story, which is exactly what happens here.
Hansel and Gretel.
And then interdiction, where the hero is told that he can't do something. Don't do this. Don't do that. Which is, George, you're not going to be able to find her, and you're not going to be able to do this. And he's given 1,000 interdictions, and then the violation of that interdiction. And so I found that he really went, like, not only was I just reminded of fairy tales constantly throughout this book and of stories in general, he actually used the functions that are in the fairy tale to tell this story. And so I think he's really trying to make a big point. Now, I'm not sure exactly, is it that we lose our hunger and then we decide that we have no need for story? Or was it that we lost story and then we decided that hunger wasn't necessary anymore, that we lost the passion for everything else? I'm not sure which he is insinuating came first, the chicken or the egg there, but I enjoyed the interconnectivity of hunger and story there.
Yeah. No, he's doing something with literacy as well. With the
whole book.
They watched a book.
Yeah. All movies are books.
Yeah.
Yeah. All TV shows are books. Yeah.
And the fact that they can't remember these like basic foundational stories that we kind of take for granted, that they're just like, oh yeah, it's like something happened with this whale and there was a guy with one leg, but I don't know, it's something like that. And
this chick had some hair and there was a tower and I don't know. Yeah.
And then there was like these two brothers in the Garden of Eden, and one of them was like really bad or something, and just kind of this superficial and I think that we're kind of experiencing that now, maybe with reality TV shows.
Well, yeah, I
less
mean,
people reading and more people, or even a resistance to fiction, to stories.
Yeah,
like
to
they
story.
I want nonfiction. I want things that really happened.
Yeah. Well, and I think, unfortunately, it's kind of like the rest of our lives. I think I was having this discussion with another friend of mine, and that we are becoming kind of a society of polar opposites. That we've got those people that are completely obsessed with keeping story in the world, and those people that just don't seem to care anymore about it. And I'm not trying to say which is good or bad. Like, is it the lefts or the rights on the political spectrum, or is it I'm not trying to make any statements there, but that we don't seem to have as many in-betweens as there used to be. There's people fighting for two different sides, and I could be wrong about that, but
and there's people who completely disappear into their story worlds.
Yes, exactly.
And then there's
which I'd like to do, but
unfortunately,
putting food on the table is what's keeping me in reality. Let's
well,
think about that.
connect
food.
connecting to
yeah.
people too, and
Yes.
like talking to real people
Yes.
who don't have magical powers and stuff like that's also cool sometimes.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes. But really and truly, I think that it's an interesting point to make that he doesn't that in this book, I guess you could say that almost George and his wife are almost though they are almost those people that retreated into a fantasy world
Mm-hmm.
because they have no connection left. And because the only thing, like if I'm saying right now as kind of a joke, but that putting food on the table, the hunger,
Mm-hmm.
my survival needs are the things that are pulling me out of fantasy worlds right now and actually making me connect,
Mm-hmm.
that they don't have that.
Yeah.
They don't have that survival need to pull them out of that world.
Struggle has been removed,
Yes, yeah.
like on a really fundamental
Well,
level.
which is why they refer to happiness as a trauma.
Yeah. Yeah, and even the poor, it's more complicated with the poor, I guess, because they
Mhm.
are still struggling for something, but it's actually really nebulous what they're
Yes.
struggling for.
Well, not necessarily the women. The women are struggling for continuity of
yeah, to be able to propagate.
Yes, yeah, of the
Uh,
species, yeah.
But
But the men have nothing left.
no, they just kind of sit around and say lewd things to the women as they pass by, and just sit in the sun, soak up some rays.
Well, but I mean, and that's the sort of consequence of not having any hunger left for anything, is that if you don't have, he seems to be making I actually almost kind of like this particular juxtaposition of because he does seem to be making work a very important thing, that if you don't have work to do with your
Mhm.
life, then you're
That's true, yeah.
lost, right?
Mhm.
However, jobs
Mhm.
are not what you want to be doing. And
No.
I enjoy that distinction, actually, because work is, I mean, let's just say, in my opinion, and in what's sort of represented in this book, is work is something that is something you choose to do with your life.
Mhm.
That is something you are passionate about, that is something you want to do.
Yeah.
And jobs are just those things that
You're a job sucker.
that suck. You're a
Yeah.
job sucker. You're just only working just to survive. That it's not something that gives you anything spiritually. It's not something that gives back to you,
Yeah.
as much as you give to it.
Mhm.
Yes.
I agree completely.
Alrighty then. Let's see here. Was there anything else we wanted to chat about, Curdles?
Well, geez, I don't know. I could. We wanted this to be a half-hour show, but we're running on to 45 minutes here.
All right
now,
then. So I guess we should just
make it an hour show.
No. Well, we could do an hour, but I think we can just.
We haven't even well, we spent a lot of time at the beginning with housekeeping and kind of
Yes.
stuff like that. So
Are we?
Yeah.
We're good. Yeah. We would like to introduce our book for the December podcast. So that'll be the first Monday in December, and so this November we'd like you to pick up The Little Shadows by Marina Endicott, and that will be our book for our book club this month. Again, I mentioned at the beginning all the housekeeping of where you can get in touch with us, so just scroll back to there.
Mhm.
And
yeah, once we have, once we have some comments, we'll incorporate that into. So you will be heard.
yes,
We
please,
will-
you will be heard. we will be listening. If you wanna start your own discussions on our Goodreads page or Facebook pages, whatever you want to do. If you wanna Twitter us, if you want to bring up anything about The Little Shadows or even about this book, we'd be happy to.
Mhm.
By Light Alone, we'd be happy to continue the conversation. And
Mhm.
we'll be watching the pages. And yeah, this has been Tanya G.
And I just wanted to thank Karen for the comment on Facebook there. And
Yes.
on,
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes.
on the
Karen
Goodreads.
did comment. Yeah. And if we're going to mention names, then yes, Shawnee also contributed to this discussion.
Good.
So yes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you're Tanya, and I'm
I'm-
Kirt.
And this has been 1, 2, 3.
Good, right reads.
Right reads.
Yeah.
There. Uh-huh.
I just said Goodreads, and then I had.
Yeah. No.
So, yeah.
No. You want to try it again?
1,
2, 3.
Right
reads. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you. Shopping local throughout the ages, the 1950s.
Damn it, Emily, I've told you a dozen times not to read while I'm telling you your place in this house.
Oh, sorry, darling. I'm just so caught up in this book.
Where'd you get that, anyways?
At Audrey's.
Say, aren't they a local business?
They sure are. You know how you like me to shop local, silly.
Gosh, I'm sorry I was cross, kitten.
It's all right, dear. You work so hard.
How's about getting me my dinner, then?